Well, hello, and welcome to Stop, Let's Team Up. And today we're going to talk just an overview of FF, and I have Ron from
Fantastic Comic
Fair. Let me start this over. God damn, brain fart. Blah. Well, hello, and welcome to Stop, Let's Team Up. We're here this week. We're going to talk Fantastic Four, just a little overview. I have a sin to confess early on in it, and I'm joined here by Ron from Fantastic Comic. How you doing, Ron?
I'm doing just fine. Excuse me. I was doing just fine until just that second ago. No, I'm doing just fine. I was sick early in the year, and I've been slowly getting myself back onto the treadmill of comic book podcasting. But I'm doing
we're glad you're back. So, folks, earlier this week I posted on Twitter that I have not ever done a read through of the Stan and Jack FF. I've read the key stories. I've read the beginning 15 that were in an a hardcover or paperback or blah blah. It's been reprinted. The first 10 issues of that book have been reprinted 1,000 times. But I've never done a run, and I have bought Finding Deals. I've gotten, and today I will get volume 1 in the mail, or tomorrow or Monday. The omnibuses, because that has everything, and it's I kind of like. I'm enjoying those for that reason, especially with this Silver Age into Bronze Age era. So I asked Ron's gonna me or just kind of go do an overview of FF. Let me ask you, what was the first FF you read?
The first FF that I actually remember was around 150, 60, and I just saw the cover. It had the Hulk and the Thing battling. It was at my cousin's house, and I think they were on the St. Louis Arch.
Yes, it is. Two-part story. Is it a Perez issue?
It was a Perez issue, yes. Because the next issue,
it's a Wolfman Perez or Lin Wine Perez.
Yeah, I remember seeing that, but I didn't exactly read it. My real introduction to Fantastic Four were the little teeny tiny pocket books that came out in the late 70s, which explains why my eyes are so bad now, because they took these big comic books and shrunk them all down into a single paperback volume. And I think Marvel did like 3 volumes of Fantastic Four at least. So that got me like up into the 30s. And that was my introduction really to Fantastic Four. My introduction was the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, of course. They were postage stamp size, and you couldn't read them. But what I started collecting is because I was a Bronze Age baby. And I was at the tail end of Roy Thomas's second run of the title. He wrote it from like 157 through 179. And I remember getting Fantastic Four 176, which had the Return of the Impossible Man after decades of not being around. Stan Lee hated the character, never brought him back. And back then, they do a little bit now, but back then it was really popular where they put the 3 comic books into the bag. You know, you would look at the top one, the bottom, and you'd have to peel the plastic apart to see what the middle comic book was. And then we had the Whitman variants, but even Marvel and DC before the Whitmans, they threw these things out into these bags, and that's how I became lifelong fans of live comic books. We have crappy distribution back then.
You had to find it in the 7-Eleven.
You had to find it at 7-Eleven, and a lot of times these bagged comic books, I think, were $3 for $1. I got to see all kinds of DC and Marvel that I would never see in my shop, and that's how I, slowly picked up the Fantastic Four.
Yeah. My gateway to it was, and I cannot remember, and I looked through the app today to see if I could find the exact issue. It is somewhere between like 115 and 120 something. Medusa, Sue's not even a member of the team when I started reading. Medusa was in the team.
Yeah, they used that old chestnut back then of every time you need more drama, let's have Sue and Reed. Something happen and Sue not become a member.
Well, he's a shitty husband. Well, he's a shitty husband and a bad father at times, depending on who's writing.
It's interesting because we were just talking off camera. Don Slott finished up his run on Fantastic Four, and at the end of his run, which didn't make much sense, it wasn't him. It was a 2-part fill-in issue. It was kind of like a Die Hard movie around Christmas with in the Baxter Building. And it was a Judgment Day tie-in. And it did a really good job of taking care of what you just said and rectifying that issue of how Reed is a bad husband. And it really crystallized all the Fantastic Four characters, how important they are,
Yeah.
Especially the marriage and the connection between Reed and Sue, because she, in that 2-part, she had a big role in that thing, and it bounced between Reed and Sue, some of the other stuff. I'm going, oh, this is why Reed and Sue could never break up. This is where they finally gotten their act together, and they're a solid marriage couple that you couldn't really effectively pull. They did that during Civil War, where they kind of like broke up a little bit, where he was on one
side. And I like that, because that is he is like Tony. He wants to fix the world, and she's like, we can't fix the world.
No.
And that's why they're a good couple. And then, and that's my big thing with FF. And when it is written well, it is about a family.
Yep.
That is the best. It is, because there are two different types of superhero team books. It's a group of rugged individuals fighting for a common cause, or it's this group of individuals who become a family, or are a family and become adventurers. And that's what FF, because I liked a lot of that, and I guess Roy was writing it, and then Len and Jerry, a bunch of other people. I mean, after Stan and Jack left, John Buscema wrote a bit, drew it a bit, Roy wrote it, Jerry Conway wrote it, Len Wein wrote it, Marv Wolfman.
See that, yeah, that, because what started this debate, as I mentioned to you, that currently in the Fantastic Four, they resigned no longer a team. That's not the first time they did that. They actually did that back in like 191, where the whole
I run back and reread, with thumb through and read some of it and thumb through, and it starts with some Perez stuff, and then it becomes Keith Pollard. I forgot Keith Pollard. Pollard was co-plotting it.
Yes. Well, this is that.
And I forgot, and it all ends up in 200 with this big doom story that I remember. I think I was actually working in the comic shop when that came out.
And that right there changed comic book industries forever, because up until that point, no comic book company made a big deal out of these legacy numberings or these special events. There's, you might have a special, hey, this is a 200th issue, but these giant size and whatever issues didn't exist back then.
Yeah. I was looking at Avenger FF 100. It's not a double size.
No,
is this a standard issue comic?
No, I found it interesting that Wolfman didn't start on the series till 196. So he only wrote that tail end leading up to the 200th issue. Because now writers will flat out, the next year to get to this next legacy issue. But Marv Wolfman only had a few issues to tie up all the loose ends from like the previous 6 months of stuff and tie it all together and build towards that 200th issue, which was Marvel's first double-sized issue. He had to talk Marvel into doing a double-sized issue.
It's insane. It's weird. I always thought he had a longer run on the book. I mean, he comes back.
Oh, he's there for a little bit, but his start is at 196, and he goes to somewhere in the 200s. But
okay, because that's when the Burn stuff is at the end of his run, isn't it?
No, Burn's not till 230s. You got several years of Burn,
but he comes back to do some of that. And
yes,
yeah, the early Burn. The Burn's what I call the Burn Senate, because it is very different. He's not writing it. He's just drawing it, and it's good and beautiful. But let's talk about. I want to talk about the Burn stuff, because there are certain eras that stand out. You gave me a list of kind of ones you wanted to talk about, and I'm the second one we're going to talk after Brett. I'm a big fan of his run as the head of that series.
I thought that was one of the best series.
I think it is. He understood it. It's people. I understand people's complaints about his Superman. There's parts of it I like, parts of it I'm like, why'd you do that? But his FF I don't have a problem with, because he really understands those characters. He really understands the family aspect. And he goes back to the Stan and Jack stuff.
Well, that was his approach. His approach was to pick up where Stan and
Jack
left off, and ignored everything pretty much from that point on, and just picked up where those two left off. That was his whole.
Yeah, he didn't say it didn't happen. I'm not going to reference these villains or that. But what I like is about midway through, because of Secret Wars, he has to change the lineup.
Yes,
and I will say this, and I will die on this hill, that She-Hulk is the 5th Beth FF member.
Yes.
She is the perfect fit. She is part of that family. Whenever they interact with her, Jennifer is equal. It makes it. People were like, "Why are you doing it?" I was going to miss her in the Avengers, because she was an integral part of the Avengers for a while, and I loved her. But from the first issue, It's just, she slides in perfectly.
And he cements the character in my head. That's where she became a lifelong favorite, because when she was created basically as a one-note character to protect the license of the Hulk.
Yeah.
You gotta have a She-Hulk because somebody else might, because the Incredible Hulk TV show was on at the same time.
I think Stern did a lot of that too. I think, and Stern and Byrne are friends, lifelong friends. And that Stern, because that's when Stern was doing his Avenger run, which is probably one of my favorite runs, because he built it. Dane Whitman had a character. Yes. Hercules had a personality. Why hasn't Janet Van Dyne been the leader? Made her a leader. He created Monica Rambeau. And, and it was a perfect transition. Secret Wars, I'm not the biggest fan of Secret Wars, but there's some things that came out of it that I really liked. And part of it was Jennifer as She-Hulk in the FF. And I actually like the white collar uniforms a great deal.
Well, I liked his Fantastic Four costume because they look like a real things that people wear. They were all wrinkly and they weren't the skin type. And everybody in tight spandex gets a little old. Yes. But you also, and then after he left, it was a little bit all over the place. And then there was the Tom DeFalco, Paul Ryan run. And you put this on your note. Yes, that is probably one of my second favorite runs after Byrne, because like Byrne, DeFalco had stuff happen. Byrne had She-Hulk replace the Thing. She had Alicia Masters become a Skrull. That was under Byrne's run. Byrne had Sue get pregnant and lose her baby.
Oh my God, that comic.
Byrne had her change from the Invisible Girl to the Invisible Woman.
Yeah, thank God.
There was a whole string of things that actually happened. Now, if you go back to the DeFalco and Paul Ryan run, that's another run. It took me a long time last year at this time to actually appreciate that run, because he wrote that book for 60 issues. Yes,
and at the end he just scripted it, and it was plotted by Ryan.
Yep,
and it did some great stuff happen.
Yep, he brought back into it the older Franklin for a while. He killed off Reed Richards for a good year and a half to 2 years. The Thing got disfigured.
I love that helmet.
Yeah, and I remember reading it back in the 90s and going, wow, this kind of sucks. I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff happening. It was not a happy time for the Fantastic Four, because there's always something happen. Then during the 60-issue run, he wrote it right up to Heroes Reborn. It makes for a great run, because you never knew from issue to issue. Dr. Doom became a member of the team during this period, too.
Scott Lang was around. They needed a super scientist, so they brought in Scott Lang. Submariner played a bigger role.
Yeah,
I have one pet peeve in it, and it is not, no offense to Paul Ryan. It is something that I hate to say Dave Cockrum kind of started, is women fighting in bikinis.
Oh,
that Invisible Woman costume is atrocious.
That is a horrible costume.
Remember, Byrne made her Malice.
Yes,
that's the Dark Phoenixing of everybody, and they do it to women.
Yeah,
which bugs the crap out of me. They do
it to men.
They do it to women. It's a misogynistic. Women turn evil, and when they say "don't do what you want," it's like, stop it. She's the most. The other thing Byrne did was, Sue is the most powerful member of the team.
Yes,
because she could because Stan and Jack had to figure a way to make her engaging and not just invisible. And, think about it, Invisible Woman, not the best concept if you look back now socially at naming a female character.
No.
But they gave her the power to create the invisible shields and slides, and gave her all these neat things to do. And then Byrne went, why haven't you thought that she's more powerful than, say, Phoenix? She could put an invisible thing in your brain and pop your head.
Yep.
And Sue becomes the leader. It's in that era where certain writers, Byrne, Stern, and some others, decided women should be the leaders of these teams. And they made a conscious, it was across the board in some Marvel stuff that women were leading the teams now.
And Sue led it for several years, especially
even when Reed came back, he said, you're the leader. I'm the scientist. You're the leader. So I don't want to touch too much on Heroes Reborn, because I hate that.
I hated that too, but I like some of the Chris Claremont run, because he actually tried to add new things to the mythos.
That, I was jumping around and I read some of it. And I'm not a big Salvador LaRocca fan. And he's a good artist. I mean, it doesn't sing to me. It was too X-Men-y. And this is, I haven't really read X-Men since Paul Smith left, because I just never been that engaged in it. And, and now it's so complicated. I think my head would explode if I tried to absorb all that mythos.
Right.
But I like the Pacheco stuff because it was Pacheco and I love his art. And so there were good runs and bad runs, or good runs and runs that I didn't read. So the Claremont, I read some of it. I did like the Pacheco stuff. I'm a big James Robinson fan. I really did not like his run. It never talked to me at all.
No.
And why are the costumes red?
That made no sense.
It was just like, what? That's just changing for change's sake.
The Fantastic Four has 60 plus years of history, hundreds of comic books. We've just touched upon a few of the runs, and not everything in Fantastic Four is readable. I hate to say that, but some of the stuff they put out has been
when people
terrible.
Don't understand it, when they go away from the family element, I think is when they stray.
And that's what made the Don Slott run so successful, that he started off with a family and kept that family seed and just grew upon it. I mean, he got Ben and Alicia married, gave them kids, and just kept that whole family thing. And a lot of the Don Slott stuff up until the Reckoning War connected the dots. It made sense. Oh, okay, I could see, they're very character-driven.
Ben gets kids, Ben and Alicia get kids, and it's a Kree and a Skrull. Yeah, I kind of like that. It's very Kirby-esque in a way. And there were eras. I'm a big Englehart fan, and I love his run on FF. But it's a little different because they've written Sue and Reed out, and they brought in Ms. Marvel or She-Thing.
Yes. Oh, that was also during DeFalco too.
Yeah. I think he created her, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he did, because they had this is where they've had. That's right. Yeah, because they had this during this part. Crystal rejoined the team also.
I love Crystal, and Stern had brought her into the Avengers, and then Harris.
Yes.
Harris used her. Yeah, and the people, if you're watching Loki, the Counter Time Council and thing, that's an FF thing.
We didn't talk about it. Yeah, we didn't
Walt
talk
Simonson's
about it.
run.
Walter Simonson did a big run of Fantastic Four that he wrote and drew it. That was really awesome.
And then they gave him Avengers, and he put Reed and Sue in it. It was so bad that it only lasted 3 issues.
Well, here's the thing. No, they made him take it. They made him take Reed and Sue out, and that's why he quit the book.
What? I read that. I'm an Avenger fan lifelong. I read that first issue and went, this is bad. This is not going to go well. And because it was a really weird lineup. It didn't make sense. There's no reason to have half the FF in the team.
Well, he did that, and he quit before he could actually do anything with it, because they made him redo his plans. They wanted to put Reed and Sue back in Fantastic Four, and that's why he quit Avengers, because he got mad over that.
It's a rough. It turns into a good.
It is a rough. That whole thing where they do join. You're right. They're rough, but and
it takes them about a year to get the book Avengers going in the right direction, because it was really off-putting.
Yes.
But I mean, the good thing about a FF is I don't think there's a terrible run.
There's less than stellar runs, but there's not necessarily.
They're always entertaining.
Mark Waid did a run for a while. He did a big run.
That's a big run in this town, because
John Hickman did a lot of stuff.
I liked Hickman's because and I like Mac Fractions, where you had the stay at home. Yep. The stay at home group where it was She-Hulk, She-Thing, a new Miss Thing or whatever it was, and Ant-Man as a team, Medusa as the team, and they were supposed to be gone 10 seconds, and then they're gone for a year.
Yes.
And I like that. The Mark Waringo, he's from Richmond.
Okay.
And his Johnny was based on one of the guys that worked at a comic shop in here called Stories. He managed just one of their Broad Street store, and he was a lifelong friend. So Johnny was drawn after a local comic shop guy.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, it was. And he did that thing where they meet God, and God is Jack.
Okay.
So I'm a big Mark Waringo fan. I think his and Wade's run is a lot of fun. A lot of fun. It could have been longer. I don't think it's more than 2 years long. I don't think it's that long, is it?
Which one?
the Wade Ringo era.
I don't think it's very long either. I don't think it's a couple.
But
it's
the app's got a lot of it on there, and jump around, folks. I'm looking forward to reading. I'm going to do not a reread, but I'm going to read 1 through 129. I'm going to read the 4 omnibuses, and finally read the stuff I missed. I read arcs. That's all I've ever read. I read the Galactus story. I read the first 4 issues. I read the Black Panther story. I never read the introduction of the Fatal Five and that whole thing where Medusa's a secret villain, because she was always a hero to me. So I kind of want to know how did they create Medusa and then decide later she was an Inhuman, or was that their plan the whole time? I think
that's kind of the thing, because she had some kind of amnesia for a while.
Imagine that. How soap opera.
Yeah. So
anything
else today, Ross?
No, that's it. And folks, I will probably do an episode now and then, just kind of talking about where I'm at in the read. I'm not going to do a weekly FF run, but I will jump in and out and let you know where I'm at and what I think.
Ross, thank you for having me on your show today. I appreciate it.
It was a blast. So where can people find you on the interwebs?
I'm a Fantastic Comic Fan, which, by the way, is actually a play on Fantastic Four. Hint, hint. I'm all over the place. I'm on social media. I'm on every major app, Fantastic Comic Fan. I'll give Ross my link tree, which has everything in there where you can follow it. Please follow the podcast. I think I have a different type of podcast. It's usually short form. You never know what I'm going to talk about. And I also cover a lot of independents and Kickstarters. And that's pretty much me, Ross.
Cool. All right, folks. As always, please check us out. Their week shows, their episodes 3 days a week. Tuesdays is Opal City Confidential, my Starman podcast, which is a joy to do. And I've got some big episodes coming up with some guests. I'm going to be doing some heavy duty editing this week. Thursdays is my Legion adventure. As you get to follow me with my Legion reread, and then weekends are episodes like this where you either have a guest or I talk about certain comic events that are happening. So until then, be safe, be smart, please be kind to one another, and read some comic books. How about some FF this week?